So welcome back to the Dear Global Leader. We are in the part 2 with Terri Morrison. I had a fantastic part 1. I think I could stay 3 weeks with you, Terri. I need to say it. But yeah, we are gonna finish in 30 minutes this part 2. So Terri, I mentioned it already. She's a world-renowned expert in cross-cultural understanding, and you are helping a lot of individuals, organizations, companies to deal with these differences of international markets. And we were closing the part 1 on food. And I think you had done a lot of research, so maybe you can just open on that. And this part will be more about all of these cultural differences. How do we translate them and navigate them into the corporate space?
Thank you, Tiphaine. It's fun to be back. Now, eating here is extremely abrupt in the US and fast. And unfortunately, since COVID, also people are interacting virtually so much. And because people in the US are used to eating at your desk or grabbing something and literally eating it as you walk down the street, we don't have these barriers in our minds many times to eating in front of people. The problem is if we just focus on virtual environments like this, you're recording this, it may stay up on the internet in perpetuity. So if you had a meeting like this and your guest was chewing, or, we have these gigantic mugs that we're always drinking out of, like we're parched. When did all this happen? I don't know. But it doesn't look as though you're really valuing the person in front of you. Even if it's just this wee little screen, it's still that you're present with me. And you could take that from the virtual environment to a physical environment where you have corporate meetings and you invite all these teams to be with you. For example, I'll talk about one incident in South Korea, which I think is in one of the books. A US Fortune 50 firm made a mistake and was liable for something that occurred in South Korea. So the general counsel from the US had his team and they flew to Seoul, South Korea, where they were met by the corporate general counsel and that team. So they're working, and at about noon on the day that they're all in this big group, the serious executive general counsel stands up and says, well, now we've worked hard. We're going to invite you to have lunch with us at this event, that we've organized. And the GC from the US was like, well, that's great. You guys have a good lunch. We're going to stay here and work because our flight leaves tomorrow night. We need to do all this and get it going. So he basically embarrassed the general counsel from South Korea in public in front of his, subordinates by saying, no, thank you. I don't want to eat with you. So, they leave, and the US team's sitting there eating crackers or who knows what. But then the second day happens. And at the second day, the same thing occurs, and the senior counsel from South Korea stands up, says, like to invite you to lunch. And the US executive says, we're really near the end of this contract, and so we really would prefer to stay here and wrap everything up so we can get home. So that time, evidently, lunch with the South Korean team was completely silent. Nobody said anything. And they come back, and the US General Counsel is saying, we're all ready to sign. We're great. Everything's terrific. We've finished all of the aspects that we needed to resolve. And the South Korean General Counsel looks at it, closes the book, and says, we're done here. Goodbye. And that was it. And the South Korean team left. And now you have a complete failure. So this Fortune 50 company has to go home, no contract is signed. And, an imminent disaster is going to happen because you have an international legal issue, a lawsuit. So the president of the Fortune 50 flew to South Korea. He was not met by the president or the vice president. He was met by a middle management person who went in, and he had to apologize, make sure that he abided by every invitation and every scenario, and he avoided the lawsuit only because he did a little research and he knew that you are the supplicant. Again, this is an abject apology for an incident that occurred that was, an intercultural disaster. But it's all hinging on face, not embarrassing people publicly, and food is actually been found to be a tremendous lubricant for good business, right? So there's a Harvard study says, okay, here's an event. This event has you eating and drinking with these clients, and let's measure it against one where you're just meeting in an office and see what's the difference in the revenue that you generate. And because your glucose levels go up, because maybe the wine is making you feel more relaxed, that meal generated more revenue consistently than the one without food and drink. And so you have to consider the value of your investment in time and the attention you pay and the relationship you build based on sharing a meal. And most cultures in the world, sales is about your relationships. It's not a transaction, right? So that's my cut on eating together.
Yeah, I have so much like different observation because yeah, in my culture and in other culture actually, food is really important. And I have the feeling that when you're in a culture that doesn't value food, it's it's very complicated for someone that values food to feel good and also to have a good impression. You remember we talked in episode 1 about first impression, but I feel that when is when you touch about something, it could be food or something else and respect or whatsoever, but the value that is really, really strong in one culture and that it's seen completely different in another one, it's not a deal breaker, but it demands a lot of like adaptation. Because when I was in the US, we could eat at whatever time. The fact is that in a lot of European countries, we are the morning, and when we eat lunch, we are the afternoon. There is like the concept of time is tied up to whenever you eat. If I eat a bit later, we're still in the morning until that I eat. And I don't understand how people can manage their time if they eat whenever they want. It's like these things. When you realize that you are a bit different. I had this fun story. I remember the first time that I went into the US. I had this meeting, same as you said, and we had like what I would call the junk food, like as a normal meal. But they were like a president of the region and people fancy and were just eating, I don't know, a pizza or something, uh, at a fast food, yes. And I don't know, but it was so weird for me. I'm honestly not a Michelin uh, restaurant person at all, or because I need something consistent. And I'm like, if I need to use my brain, I need also something that is not, that maybe it's feeding me a bit more, right? Now I'll be hungry in 2 hours. And I remember I was asking this to him. I was like, is it normal? And so on. They were like, totally, yes. They were so over the moon to have that to it. And I was like, oh, I don't want to eat that at all. And I had that in many countries where also I had something else, and maybe you can tell me. I was discussing it with other colleagues, but in certain countries, you need to actually be super strategic with your meal because they don't eat at lunch or they eat very tiny. So for people like us, we don't expect that. So we arrive and then suddenly we eat like a tiny sandwich and we're like, what's the rest? Where is the rest? We need to eat more. And then the second day you have learned, how to eat better at breakfast and you know that dinner will come at a certain time. It's just funny enough for the English speaker, it's like so weird. They're like, why do you need to plan all that? But it's because we function around food you know and I feel that this is not only French. There is a lot of other countries, even in, let's say, Asia, where food is really important. We will always stop to have the meal. And in other countries, just like, oh, if we skip it, we skip it. I'm like, what? You are losing points with me here.
I love that example of the pizza because I know how many law firms I've been to that lunch is in this room on the side and all the clients are there. It's just a bunch of pizza and hoagies, and that's it. And you're supposed to take it back to your position on the big table
Mm.
that
And
everybody's
it's one
around.
slice only. What do I
That's
do
it.
with that?
And it could be bad pizza sometimes. It could be like greasy or too much pepperoni or whatever. So yeah, I hear you. And the other thing is that your brain uses so much of your metabolism, right? You need to feed your brain. And when you're little in France or in Japan and you go to lunch, you are given a plate with certain kinds of foods. And there's a chef in the back making good food for you. And you sit down with a knife and a fork or your chopsticks or whatever, and you eat a decent meal as a child. And here, it's here's all these things that they'll just throw on, and then you go and then you're supposed to have 20 minutes of recess afterwards. And the child doesn't process the value of food. And many times they won't eat what they're given by their parents because they would rather use the money to go buy chips and soda. So there's a lot of difference in our views on it. But if you go then to an event like you're talking about, where you need to be smart, you need to have a conscious capacity to go through a very long day. For you, that's real difficult if you don't have the appropriate amount of calories and types of food. And there's people who don't eat certain things too. There's a lot of taboos involved in meals. So perhaps you're Hindu and you won't eat beef, or maybe you're Muslim and you don't eat pork, or you're afraid to eat a certain kind of shellfish, or you have this or that taboo. That's one of the things that I'm glad to see, that at least the concept of taboos in foods and dietary restrictions is more, people are becoming more aware of that and sensibilities are changing. But it is important to consider opportunities for vegans, to have something besides that pizza or whatever, and that will make them happier. And I have one quick story. So I was working with a group of gentlemen from Manhattan, big financial company. They had gone to Spain. They go to Madrid, and the people from Spain meet them, and they're like, "Oh, it's so wonderful to meet you." And my guys from the US had learned a little Spanish. So they're like, mucho gusto. And they're like, okay, nos vamos a comer a las 6. And so the Spaniards are like, oh, good for you. You learned a little Spanish. They didn't correct them. So at 6 o'clock, these executives are in the lobby waiting to go to dinner. And there's no madrileños there. And so my guys, who I didn't know yet, okay, this is all before I met them, they go to the bar and they start to have a drink. And finally at 8 o'clock, the madrileños roll in and they're like, hey, we're going to go have some tapas here and some this, and we'll walk and we'll have a nice dinner about 10 o'clock. Now, my new client is drunk, is jet lagged, is angry, and they feel disrespected. And so, but the Spaniards didn't do anything wrong. They were trying to be polite and saying, that's nice. And nobody sat there and said, you don't eat until 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So they nearly lost that contract. But that was good. I got work out of that. And then once you explain it, to take some little nuts and raisins with you or whatever, so you can tide yourself over until that client is ready to eat.
Yeah, yeah, I've been in this type of situation. Tips: always get a snack on you, like for my peers that need to food. But you touch upon another concept I wanted to discuss is like transparency. Sometimes we feel we're transparent with our communication, and in some culture, transparency is a trust sign. You're transparent to me. I know what you feel. We are in a trust relationship. But I sense also that sometimes being too transparent also damages your authority. And I wanted to maybe did you research transparency, and what can you tell us about that?
In the US, we sometimes overshare. So, for example, with that when I was talking about the South Koreans, and the US team told them when their flight was. The next day, we have to catch the 6 p.m. flight from Seoul back to wherever it was. That is one of the first things you learn when you work with the federal government, because I've worked with different arms of the military over the years. And when I do presentations for the government, that's the military, could be the Army or the Navy or whomever. And they always come back to me and say, Terri, you're so naive because you don't really understand how much information they have on you already. Before I ever get to China, they know my background, they know the books, they know probably my travel arrangements because they'll figure it out, and which hotel I'm in. And there's also many, many hotels that have little cameras all over the place, right? So they're monitoring you. So for for when I travel, I'm a little more circumspect about how much information I offer. Because yes, it makes me look naive if I come in and I say, well, here's the plans to my next book, or here's the plans to this new invention, because they assume that you're going to be smart enough to hold a little data close to your vest. And if you come across with too much information, you look infantile. Okay, so yes, transparency is great if it's built on the fact that we share values, we share these goals that we want to achieve, and that we personally can relate to each other. And that takes a little time too. That's not going to happen many times in the first meeting. You go to the Mid East, it could be 3, 4 visits. It could be a year or two before they really trust you and give you the contract, right? Because they have plenty of family members or networks they already know. So they feel obligated to give them business as well. So you have to be better. You have to have better technology, better investments in relationships and helping each other before you will be seen as reliable, superior. You need a presence in the country. There's a lot of different significant aspects to even opening a franchise in different cultures. You have to have abided by their local sensibilities for different meals. Say you open a KFC or something in Japan, or a new product in Saudi Arabia. There's all kinds of issues that take time to build that relationship. And that's where transparency has to be developed over time. Once people trust you, they won't ask you so many questions. But when you first go to a country, I mean, go to India, go to Japan or Korea, you will get so many questions the first time you go there, right? From how old are you to how much you earn. And that goes back to they have hierarchical cultures and different honorifics. So they have to know how to address you appropriately within their own language structure. Sorry, I digress. I always do this.
And you know that I love it, so I will not stop you. But I have another burning question I want to ask you, because this is something I'm trying to navigate. I'm not good at it at all. It's office politics. I'm learning a bit more, that I feel when you are bad, you don't like it, but you are still in it, so you have to navigate it. And I have the feeling that a lot of this office politics is actually relationship based and stakeholder management, but not in a positive let's move together towards the same goal. It's like there is conflicting interest and so on. And I wanted to understand if culture also affect office politics, and if so, in what way?
If you look at Descartes, and he said, cogito ergo sum, right? I think, therefore I am. That is totally embedded in our society, that and the Socratic method. Okay, so a lot of the individualism in the world is based here in the USA. And we revere people who pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and yeah, they fail and we don't care. Go out to California to a gold rush and you don't get hit gold, but you started another business. So failure is okay. Just consistent individuality is what matters, which also means that we're extremely competitive and we're also risk takers. We're comfortable with risk. So if you compare that to China, where you have Lao Tzu and Confucius, so you're thinking more about humility and honoring each other and structure within a hierarchy that will mean I abide by what the group wants. I will work together with people, even if it means that I don't get what I want. The group unanimously decided that I'm supposed to go to this college instead of a different one. I will go where they say to go, because I don't exist if I don't have that group of people around me, whether it's at work, the group at work, or my personal relationships. I have to establish the harmony. I have to sustain the tranquility of the work environment. So that means working together. And you don't rat on each other and you take the blame even if you didn't do that particular mistake. Over here, you have a bunch of sharks, okay? And they're competitive and they're going to try and win. So if you're around the water cooler or getting coffee or whatever you're doing, the kind of conversations are probably not, hey, how can we work together? It's probably more like, well, what happened to you? Or how did that happen? Or tell me a piece of this information or so. It's not, it's not that people are trying to be cruel um, or trying to be not a team player. It's that they feel they have to achieve independently of the group. So office politics reflects that. If you work with attorneys, if you work with physicians or entities that have their own little practices, in even if you look at the big five, the accounting firms, you're either going to make partner in a couple years or you're out. You don't get to stay there as a junior attorney or a junior partner for 6, 7, 8 years, because then it's like, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you achieve the next level? So there's a lot of training. They'll send you to a lot of good training. You have to actually get, your annual legal certifications and so forth. But it's a totally different mindset than saying, oh, welcome to our group. It's so nice to have you here. Tell me all about yourself. It's just different. One's not better than the other. It's just a different way that we've evolved. So independence and individualism is extremely high here. Consensus-based and relational-based is going to be the majority of the world. So we don't always mesh that well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then I need to have a follow-up question or advice from you, because I know that I come from a collective mindset country. France is a social country, at least from the history, then after politics happens. So I'm more of a group thinker. I'm more of the person that you say, oh, yes, I will help you get seen and so on. And I think this is now I understand why I'm bad at office politics, because I'm apparently not I'm the collectivist of the group, but I wonder, we are now in international setup where we have mixed cultures, and of course then when you have competition, people tends to be more individualistic. The follow-up question is like, how can people like me that are more collectivist survive office politics then?
The best option, I would say, would be to get a mentor. It's always the individual above you that can guide you most. And for example, when I got my first job in high tech, uh, I I was told you need to go to lunch with all the leaders of these divisions so that they get a chance to get used to you, find out what your capabilities are, and put a face to the name. That's not as common now because of the virtual access that you have, but you can still have those meetings. And when you do that and you have that chance to spend time with all the leaders that you get a chance to do, and you could do it in an organizational structure after work too, whichever way they prefer to do it. Um, then you find the one or two that you mesh with. That's how I approached it. I feel like it's more common now to pair with mentors than it used to be. And that person knows the organization and they will be able to give you some advice. The problem is that time is money here, you know. And I had a boss who literally would take his watch off and put it on the desk in front of him. This is before smartphones, and say, "You have 5 minutes." And I'd say, "I only need two," because I can be a pain to also. But, I also think that women manage scenarios differently. So because I was competitive and I did feel like I can do this very efficiently, I can, we call a little code switch. I can be the nice Italian, Irish, French, English person who's very warm and nurturing, or I can be a complete automaton and I can just go in, do the job and leave and go, yay, I got paid. That's great. It depends upon what makes that individual happy. And so that's an adaptation strain that it also reflects in reading body language. It's what ambassadors test well for. They can read a room, they can understand how to interact and communicate. And it also takes a lot of stamina. So I feel for you because, again, it's cognitively draining to have to change. But, after you're all done, if you have a bad day, go for a run or go to the gym or something and just, the heck with that. I'm all done today. And I did as best I could. But I'm sure you're incredibly successful at it. You can tell immediately that you're
Yeah.
sensitive to the room. Yeah.
I think I'm good with like connection. I'm good with people, and maybe this is the high context culture, but it's true that I'm not someone that will throw on people under the bus, or also I have more of an interest. Like one of my manager at one time he had told me like, Tiphaine, why do you always feel the urge to act? When it's things that are not supposed to be under your mandate, and I have these things where I want to create an impact, and I think I have some sort of like personal values that sometimes collides with personal interests. It's like I want to do good. I want to like the company succeed and all these things that sounds naive, but that actually really, really drive me from, the bottom of like my passion. And it's really a burning fire for me. And I feel that sometimes, even if I'm very culturally aware, it makes me really not see what is happening around me, because for a long time I was thinking this is not important, because I was thinking, why should I waste time doing these things that adds zero value, and that basically waste my time because it's adding zero value. It's like, I don't know, gossiping and all these negative things that are not me and not my values. And for me, I prefer to like connect and get curious and, understand things. And, but now I understand, moving more and more toward leadership, that, hey, this is a game that is happening. And if I want to actually do good and influence, I need to at least navigate it, meaning that I stay me, I stay with my value, but somehow I need to, avoid the bullets. I need to up, and I'm on that journey. I know that this is not my ambition to be good at it because it's not my values, but at least I need to not be as naive to think that this is not something that exists, and I need to just realize it's here. So it's a bit more my mindset now.
I completely empathize with your drive to achieve something. If you have invested your time and there's no action to take after the event, it's so frustrating. You feel so drained because why am I here? That I get it. Perennial question. I could be out doing something phenomenal, which obviously this is an outlet for you. And I'm proud of you. You're an entrepreneur and you're doing something that has immediate impact and it is of benefit to people. It has value. That's how I am. And that's why I left corporate America, because it was extremely difficult for me to sit there and think, I could have done this, before I even walked in the door, and here I am, and I'm sitting here, but that's the structure of so many organizations, and you have to be sort of a cog in a wheel for a while, and then you abide by their sensibilities and their structure, and then you move up. But it's a decision that you have to make. Do you really want that, or do you prefer to have your own business and write books and have a podcast and do things that are self-actualizing, or maybe you can balance these things. And it's a struggle because we're in a very amorphous time too. There's change happening in corporations, there's change happening in higher ed. So the good thing is you can make a tremendous change occur based upon your own intellect. And that's what I feel like gives me hope. People, individuals can all do this if they find the right path and it makes a difference in their lives. So I don't see anything wrong with you. I think you're great.
Ah, thanks, Terry. Come on, don't tell me that. I told you I don't like compliments. So, but I see, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time left. So I will ask you the last three questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is, and this is a shorter one, it won't be a lot of deep analysis. It's, what is a skill that you learn early on in your life, in your career, and that you still reuse today?
I grew up in a Quaker environment when I was very young. So tolerance is a precept for the Quakers. And so that was embedded in me. And it is probably one of the reasons why I do what I do, because I believe that we all have intrinsic value. And my best friend when I was growing up was Black. And this was in the late 50s, early 60s. So that was interesting to discover that I thought June and I were the same. And it wasn't until like fourth grade that I realized from something that she said, look at the palm of my hand and put yours there. And she said, that's the only place that we really are the same. And, so we both cried and so forth. But that, we're talking about what shapes you. And it was that kind of understanding that it's not equal for any of us. It could be the same if I went to Shanghai and lived there, or, June has to deal with that. So tolerance and respect, that's what cooks for me.
A second last question would be about an advice that you can give maybe to aspiring leaders, emerging leaders, maybe on their journey to global leadership. And I have a tweak for you. Also, maybe you can talk about what is it to be culturally intelligent then for leaders.
Well, leadership is so different in different cultures. Russians like a strong authoritarian leader historically. Swedes are egalitarian, so it's a lot more of a flat culture. So you have to see what is the leadership style that works in each scenario. Some cultures, India, the leader is generally almost a patriarchal figure or a matriarchal figure. So it's like the employees are your family and you must care for them personally as well as professionally. And sometimes the French are like this too. You know, I go into a supermarket in the US and I can say something about, oh, that person who works here is just really, you know, not nice for whatever reason. They're having a bad day or whatever, and they might say something to the manager or whatever, and the manager would admonish that employee. You go into a place in France and you say the same thing. Oh, your employee was, you know, a little abrupt to me. I don't know what's going on. The French manager is going to say, so, okay, because you're not A, trained to be so obsequious, and B, that's their employee. You should not impose your, US view on whether or not they're, kowtowing to you. So leadership is different. And the best advice I was given when I started was make sure the people that work with you when you travel give you credibility. Because, say, I'm working with a gentleman who started with the Big Red Book. He wrote the first preface, Hans Kohler. Now I have Lauren Swartz on this one. But I traveled with Hans, and he spoke German. And we were in an environment where there were a lot of Germans in the audience. And so as soon as, but Hans was a contractor to me at that scenario. So they're speaking German to him because everybody's thrilled. Oh, you speak German. And yet I'm the boss. So Hans was so smooth. He turned to me and said, Terri, they're asking such and so, what do you think? And I was so grateful because he gave me the credibility. And it only took one or two of those situations, and they all the whole room shifted and went, she is the boss. Okay. So let's switch back to English for her because she's an idiot. She doesn't speak German. Oh, well, we'll just abide by that. But that's what you need to be a good leader. You need to have people around you who will give you that gravitas in any situation, and then you have to absolutely do the same for them, I think. Be at their side in a situation. They're human. People make mistakes, That's another topic. Apologies.
No worries. We'll need a part three then. No, love it, love it. Last questions then, and I now just say it's a it's a question for me, but I'm an avid book reader. I think you know it because I read your books, and I wonder, we'll talk about your book in a moment, but is there another book, maybe a nonfiction books that you can recommend for the audience? And it doesn't need to be on that topic. It can be just something that you love to gift, or it has a good influence on you and you want to share it.
Thank you. Well, work-wise, when I was writing the American Bar Association book, there's a book called Legal Anthropology, and it's published in England. I'll have to get a link and send it to you. There's not that many of them, but that was a real eye-opening book for me because the legal systems are so different around the world. But this was an anthropologist's view on why they are. Common law, Sharia law, you have civil law, and the Judaic law, there's a term for it, and I'm blanking. So that book made an impact on me, legal anthropology. And then, of course, there's um, The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. Everybody knows that. Yeah, Erin's great. She does an analysis that compares in matrices different styles. So that's a good one. Um, Great one. From a personal perspective, oh, there's another book, work-wise, called Quiet by Susan Cain. That's a good one that goes with Ma, right? She has excellent views on that in terms of introverts and their value to society. My personal books run like, I grew up with a father who liked cowboy books. And yeah, so I like Lonesome Dove. That's sort of the quintessential US cowboy kind of novel. I always think that. And then, of course, the fantasy and Lord of the Rings, or something like that, the Hobbit series. So those are mine.
Super. Love it. I think I we exceeded the time I booked, so I'm super sorry for that. But thank you so much, Terry. It was fantastic discussion, and I will redirect the people on your LinkedIn. This is also where we connected. And as I mentioned, maybe you can show the books because you have them for with you. The series called Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands. So I also want you to check this out. And yeah, and thank you so much, Terry. Ready.
It was a pleasure. We had such a good chat. And yes, here are the books. The big red one, Kiss Bow or Shake Hands. That's the bestseller. That's sold over 500,000 copies now. And this one is a sales and marketing. This actually got good reviews for the UAE because we do a good analysis of Middle Eastern practices and behavioral styles. And this is the last one. If people would like an electronic review copy of this and they contact you, you can let me know and I will send them one, the free electronic review one. Thank you. Thank you. It's been such fun.